My girlfriend called her ex-boyfriend and invited him over to our apartment while my father was having emergency heart surgery at the hospital. When I came home, I found him drinking my beer on my couch and she was cuddled up next to him like nothing happened. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but here I am at 3 a.m., still trying to process what happened 3 days ago. My girlfriend Sarah, 24F, and I, 26M, have been together for almost 14 months now. We moved in together about 6 months ago when her lease ended, and everything seemed to be going well until this past weekend. Let me start with some background about my family situation. My father has been dealing with heart problems for the past 2 years. He had his first heart attack when he turned 58, and since then, my mother has been constantly worried about his health. Dad is stubborn and refuses to take his medication regularly, which drives everyone in our family crazy. My younger sister Emma lives about 4 hours away with her husband and 2 kids, so when something happens with Dad, it usually falls on me to handle things since I live only 20 minutes from my parents. Sarah knows all of this. She has met my parents several times, and they really like her. My mother always asks about her and invites her to family dinners. Sarah seemed to get along well with everyone, and I thought she understood how important my family is to me. My father can be difficult sometimes, but Sarah never complained about his grumpy attitude or his tendency to give unsolicited advice about everything. The problems with Sarah and my family boundaries started about 3 months ago, but I didn't think much of it at first. She would make comments about how much time I spent talking to my mother on the phone, or how I would drop everything to help my parents with small things around their house. Sarah would roll her eyes when my mother called during dinner or when I had to leave early from our plans to help Dad with something. I told her that family comes first for me, and she said she understood, but her actions showed otherwise. 2 weeks ago, my father had another episode. He was having chest pains and shortness of breath, so my mother called an ambulance. I rushed to the hospital and spent the entire night there while they ran tests. Sarah texted me a few times asking when I would be home, but I was too focused on Dad to respond immediately. When I finally got home the next morning, she made a comment about how I could have at least let her know what was happening. I explained that I was dealing with a medical emergency, and she said she understood, but she seemed annoyed. The incident that destroyed everything happened last Saturday night. Dad had been feeling unwell for a few days, complaining about chest pain and dizziness. Mom had been calling him every few hours to check on him, but he kept insisting he was fine. Around 9 p.m., Mom called me in a panic. She had driven over to check on Dad and found him collapsed in his living room. She had already called 911, and they were taking him to the hospital. I grabbed my keys and told Sarah I had to leave immediately. She was on the couch watching some reality TV show and barely looked up when I told her what was happening. I asked if she wanted to come with me to the hospital, and she said she would rather stay home since hospitals make her uncomfortable. I didn't have time to argue, so I left. At the hospital, the situation was serious. Dad had suffered another heart attack, and the doctors were working to stabilize him. My mother was a mess, crying and shaking. My sister Emma was driving through the night to get there, but it would take her several hours. I was the only family member there to handle everything with the doctors and insurance, while also trying to comfort my mother. Around midnight, I started getting text messages from Sarah. At first, they were asking how Dad was doing, which seemed normal. But then the messages got weird. She started complaining that I had left the dishes in the sink and that she had to clean them herself. Then she sent a message saying she was bored and asked when I would be home. I was standing in a hospital corridor while my father was fighting for his life, and my girlfriend was complaining about dirty dishes. I ignored the messages and focused on what was happening with Dad. The doctors managed to stabilize him, but they said he would need surgery in the morning. Emma arrived around 2 a.m., and we took turns staying with Mom while she tried to get some rest in the hospital waiting room. Around 3 a.m., my phone started buzzing constantly. Sarah was calling me over and over. I finally answered, thinking maybe she had realized how serious the situation was and wanted to check on me. Instead, she started yelling at me for ignoring her messages. She said I was being selfish for not responding to her, and that she felt abandoned. I could not believe what I was hearing. I told her in a low voice that my father was in the ICU and might not make it through the night, and that I needed to focus on my family right now. Sarah's response was something I will never forget. She said that I always put my family before her, and that she was tired of feeling like she came second to everything else in my life. She said she needed me to come home right now because she was having anxiety about being alone in the apartment. I hung up on her. I turned off my phone and didn't turn it back on until the next morning after Dad's surgery was successful. When I finally checked my messages, I found 23 text messages and 11 missed calls from Sarah. The messages started with her apologizing for calling during the emergency, but then they got progressively worse. She accused me of caring more about my parents than about her. She said I was emotionally unavailable and that she deserved better than being ignored for an entire night. The message that broke something inside me was sent at 4:30 a.m. Sarah wrote that she had called her ex-boyfriend Marcus to come over and keep her company because she couldn't handle being alone. She said it wasn't fair that I had left her by herself during a difficult time, and that Marcus understood her needs better than I did. I stared at that message for about 10 minutes. My father was recovering from emergency heart surgery, my mother had not slept in 2 days, my sister had driven through the night to be here, and my girlfriend had invited her ex-boyfriend over to our apartment because she felt neglected. When I got home Sunday evening, I found Marcus sitting on my couch drinking my beer and watching my TV. Sarah was curled up next to him like they were a couple. When she saw me, she jumped up and tried to hug me, acting like nothing had happened. Marcus stood up and introduced himself like we were meeting at a casual party. I told him to get out of my apartment immediately. Sarah started explaining that Marcus had just come over to keep her company, and that nothing inappropriate had happened. She said I was overreacting and that I should be grateful she had someone there to support her while I was dealing with my family crisis. Marcus left without saying anything else, but the damage was already done. I told Sarah that what she had done was unforgivable. She had turned my father's medical emergency into something about her, complained that I was not giving her enough attention while my family was in crisis, and then invited another man into our shared living space. Sarah started crying and saying that she had been scared and alone, and that she just needed emotional support. I asked her why she couldn't get emotional support from her own friends or family instead of her ex-boyfriend. Sarah said that Marcus was the only person who answered his phone that late at night, and that he was just being a good friend. I told her that good friends don't come over to your apartment at 4 a.m. when your boyfriend is dealing with a family emergency. Sarah kept apologizing and saying she would never do it again, but I couldn't get past what had happened. The fact that her first instinct during my family crisis was to call another man, especially an ex-boyfriend, showed me exactly where her priorities were. She had made my father's heart attack about her own needs and feelings. We spent the next 2 days barely speaking to each other. Sarah kept trying to bring me food and apologize, but I couldn't even look at her properly. Every time I thought about her messages from that night, or about finding Marcus in my living room, I got furious all over again. She had violated my trust and my space during the worst possible moment. On Tuesday morning, I told Sarah that she needed to find somewhere else to live. She started crying immediately and begging me to reconsider. She said she loved me and that she had made a terrible mistake, but that we could work through it together. I told her that some mistakes are too big to work through, and that this was one of them. Sarah packed her things and went to stay with her sister across town. She has been texting me constantly since then, alternating between apologies and accusations. Sometimes she says she's sorry and wants to fix things, and other times she says I'm being unfair and that I care more about my family than about our relationship. The thing that bothers me most is that she still doesn't seem to understand why what she did was so wrong. She keeps saying that she was just scared and needed support, like that justifies everything. She doesn't seem to grasp that calling your ex-boyfriend and inviting him over while your partner is dealing with a family emergency crosses every possible boundary. My father is doing better now, and the doctors say his recovery is going well. My mother has been staying at the hospital most days, and Emma extended her visit to help out. Nobody in my family knows exactly what happened with Sarah, but they can tell that something is wrong between us. When Mom asked where Sarah was yesterday, I just said she was busy with work. I keep thinking about whether I'm being too harsh, but then I remember those text messages and finding Marcus on my couch, and I know I made the right decision. Some things can't be forgiven or forgotten, and this is one of them. Update 1: I posted about my situation with Sarah 3 weeks ago, and a lot has happened since then. First, let me update you on my father's condition. Dad is recovering well from his surgery, though he's still having some complications that require regular doctor visits. He's finally taking his medications properly, which is a relief to everyone in the family. My mother has been doing better too, now that Dad is stable and following his treatment plan. As for Sarah, things got much worse before they got better. After she moved out, she continued texting and calling me multiple times every day. At first, her messages were apologetic, but when I didn't respond, they became increasingly desperate and then angry. She would swing between blaming herself and blaming me, sometimes in the same message. About a week after she moved out, Sarah showed up at my workplace. I work at a small accounting firm, and she came during my lunch break and caused a scene in the lobby. She was crying and asking loudly why I wouldn't talk to her, and demanding that I explain to everyone what she had done wrong. My boss had to ask her to leave, and it was embarrassing for everyone involved. That evening, Sarah's sister Lisa called me. Lisa and I had always gotten along well, and she wanted to understand what had happened between Sarah and me. I explained the whole situation to her, including the messages Sarah sent during Dad's emergency and finding Marcus in my apartment. Lisa was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Then Lisa told me something that changed my perspective on everything. She said that Sarah had been complaining about my relationship with my family for months. According to Lisa, Sarah felt like she was competing with my parents for my attention, and she had been planning to give me an ultimatum about choosing between her and my family. The night of Dad's emergency just pushed her to act on those feelings earlier than she had planned. Lisa also revealed that Sarah had been in contact with Marcus for weeks before the incident. They had been meeting for coffee and texting regularly, though Lisa didn't think anything physical was happening between them. Sarah had told Lisa that Marcus understood her better than I did, and that he thought I was too focused on my family responsibilities. This information hit me hard. It meant that Sarah's actions during Dad's crisis weren't just a panicked reaction to being alone. She had been building a relationship with Marcus as a backup plan, and she used my family emergency as an excuse to bring him into our living space. But that wasn't even the worst part of what Lisa told me. She said that Sarah had been telling people, including some of our mutual friends, that I had broken up with her because I was having an inappropriate relationship with my sister Emma. Sarah was spreading rumors that my close relationship with my family was actually something unhealthy and wrong. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emma is married with 2 children, and the idea that anyone would think something inappropriate was happening between me and my sister made me sick. But Sarah had planted this idea in people's minds as a way to make herself look like the victim in our breakup. Lisa apologized for telling me about the rumors, but she said she thought I deserved to know what Sarah was saying about me. She also said that she had tried to talk to Sarah about her behavior, but that Sarah was convinced that she had done nothing wrong and that I was being unreasonable. The next day, I started getting strange looks and comments from some of our mutual friends. Jake, who I had known since college, made a weird comment about how some guys get too attached to their families. Rebecca, who Sarah and I used to double date with, asked me if everything was okay at home with my sister. It became clear that Sarah's rumors were spreading. I decided I had to do something to stop the lies before they got completely out of control. I called our mutual friends and explained what had really happened. I told them about Sarah's behavior during Dad's medical emergency, about finding Marcus in my apartment, and about the months of planning that Lisa had revealed. Most of our friends were shocked and apologetic once they heard the real story. Jake was especially angry when he learned the truth. He said Sarah had called him crying a few days earlier, claiming that I had dumped her for no good reason and that she suspected I had unhealthy family relationships. Jake had felt sorry for her and had been planning to call me to suggest I reconsider the breakup. Instead, he ended up calling Sarah to tell her that spreading lies about me was unacceptable. The confrontation with our friend group didn't go well for Sarah. Most people were disgusted by her behavior and cut contact with her entirely. Rebecca told me that Sarah had tried to get her to invite me to a party so that Sarah could ambush me and try to win me back. When Rebecca refused and told Sarah she was being manipulative, Sarah accused Rebecca of taking my side and ruined that friendship too. Around this time, I also learned that Sarah had been contacting my family members directly. She had called my mother twice, crying and asking her to convince me to give Sarah another chance. Mom was confused because she didn't know exactly what had happened between us, and Sarah's calls upset her during an already stressful time with Dad's recovery. Sarah also sent a long message to Emma through social media, apologizing for any misunderstandings and asking Emma to help fix our relationship. Emma showed me the message, and it was full of manipulative language about how much Sarah loved me and how she just wanted our family to be whole again. Emma was annoyed that Sarah was involving her in our personal drama, especially given everything that was happening with Dad. The final straw came when Sarah showed up at my parents' house unannounced. Dad was home alone recovering from his surgery, and Sarah knocked on their door claiming she wanted to check on his health. Dad, not knowing about our breakup, let her in and offered her coffee. Sarah then spent an hour crying to my father about how much she missed me and asking him to help us get back together. When Mom came home from grocery shopping and found Sarah in their living room, she was furious. Mom told Sarah that it was inappropriate to involve them in our relationship problems, especially when Dad was still recovering from major surgery. Sarah left, but not before making comments about how my family always stuck together against outsiders. That evening, Mom called me and demanded to know what was going on. I had been trying to protect my parents from the drama, but I couldn't keep hiding the truth when Sarah was dragging them into it. I told Mom and Dad everything that had happened, including Sarah's behavior during the medical emergency and the rumors she had been spreading. My parents were shocked and angry. Dad said he felt manipulated by Sarah's visit, and Mom was upset that Sarah had been bothering her during an already difficult time. They both said they never wanted to see Sarah again, and that they were disappointed in how she had handled the situation. Emma was even angrier when she learned about the rumors Sarah had been spreading. As a mother of 2 young children, Emma was disgusted that anyone would spread lies about inappropriate family relationships. She said she was considering taking legal action if Sarah continued to spread false stories about our family. By the end of that second week, Sarah had burned bridges with almost everyone we knew. Her manipulation and lies had backfired completely, and she found herself isolated from our entire social circle. Lisa told me that Sarah was now claiming that everyone was against her and that I had somehow turned all our friends and family against her. The harassment from Sarah finally stopped when Lisa gave her an ultimatum. Lisa told Sarah that if she didn't stop contacting me and my family, Lisa would kick her out of her apartment and Sarah would have to find somewhere else to live. Lisa was tired of dealing with Sarah's drama and emotional manipulation, and she wanted the whole situation to end. Sarah sent me one final message after that conversation with Lisa. Instead of apologizing or taking responsibility for her actions, she blamed me for destroying her relationships with our friends and family. She said I was vindictive and cruel, and that someday I would realize what I had lost. She claimed that Marcus was a better man than I was because he had been there for her when she needed support. That message confirmed that I had made the right decision. Even after losing our relationship, our mutual friends, and the respect of my family, Sarah still couldn't accept responsibility for her own actions. She was still blaming me for everything that had gone wrong, and still defending her decision to call Marcus during my family crisis. I blocked Sarah's number after reading that final message. I also blocked her on all social media platforms and asked our mutual friends not to share any information about my life with her. It was clear that any contact with Sarah would just lead to more drama and manipulation. Update 2: It's been about 2 months since my last update, and I thought I should let you know how things have been going. My father's health has improved significantly, and he's back to most of his normal activities. He still has to be careful and take his medications, but the doctors are pleased with his recovery. Mom has been less stressed now that Dad is doing better, and our family dynamic has returned to something closer to normal. The situation with Sarah took another turn about a month ago that I wasn't expecting. Her sister Lisa called me again, and this time she sounded different, more serious and worried than before. Lisa told me that Sarah had been having a really hard time since our breakup, but that her behavior was getting concerning in ways that went beyond just missing me. According to Lisa, Sarah had been calling in sick to work frequently and spending most of her time in bed or on the couch. She wasn't eating properly, wasn't taking care of basic hygiene, and had stopped participating in activities she used to enjoy. Lisa was worried that Sarah might be having some kind of mental health crisis, and she wanted to know if I would consider talking to Sarah just once to provide some closure. I told Lisa that I appreciated her concern, but that I didn't think talking to Sarah would help either of us. I reminded Lisa about all the lies Sarah had spread and the way she had harassed my family during Dad's recovery. Lisa acknowledged that Sarah's behavior had been wrong, but she said she was genuinely worried about Sarah's well-being. A few days after that conversation with Lisa, I got a call from Marcus. Yes, the same Marcus who had been in my apartment that night. I almost hung up on him immediately, but something in his voice made me listen for a few seconds. Marcus said he needed to tell me something important about Sarah, and that it would only take a few minutes of my time. Marcus explained that he and Sarah had continued seeing each other after our breakup, but that their relationship had become problematic very quickly. According to Marcus, Sarah was obsessed with getting me back and would spend their entire time together talking about me and our relationship. She would cry constantly, blame me for everything that was wrong in her life, and ask Marcus to help her figure out ways to contact me. Marcus said that Sarah had asked him to create fake social media accounts to follow me and my family members online. She wanted him to gather information about what we were doing so she could find ways to insert herself back into our lives. When Marcus refused, Sarah accused him of not really caring about her and threatened to tell people that he had taken advantage of her during a vulnerable time. The most disturbing thing Marcus told me was that Sarah had driven by my apartment building multiple times over the past few weeks. She had also been showing up at places she knew I might be, like the grocery store I usually go to and the gym where I have a membership. Marcus said Sarah would spend hours planning these encounters and getting upset when she didn't run into me. Marcus ended the call by saying that he was ending his relationship with Sarah because her behavior was becoming too intense and concerning. He said he felt like he needed to warn me that Sarah might try to escalate her attempts to contact me, especially now that he wasn't around to distract her. I was unsettled by this conversation, but I wasn't entirely surprised. Sarah's behavior after our breakup had already shown me that she had trouble accepting reality and taking responsibility for her actions. The fact that she was now stalking me and trying to manipulate Marcus into helping her just confirmed that I had made the right decision to cut all contact. About a week after Marcus called me, the situation escalated exactly like he had predicted. I was leaving my apartment for work one morning when I found Sarah sitting in her car in the parking lot. She had clearly been waiting for me, because she got out of her car immediately when she saw me and started walking toward me. Sarah looked terrible. She had lost weight, her hair was messy, and she was wearing clothes that looked like she had slept in them. She started talking quickly, saying that she needed to explain everything to me and that I had to listen to her. She said she had figured out where she went wrong and that she could fix our relationship if I just gave her another chance. I told Sarah that she needed to leave and that I didn't want to talk to her. Sarah started crying and begging me not to walk away from her. She said that losing me had destroyed her life and that she couldn't function without me. She grabbed my arm when I tried to go to my car, and I had to physically remove her hand. Sarah followed me to my car, talking the entire time about how much she loved me and how sorry she was for everything. She said she had learned from her mistakes and that she would never put anyone before me again. She promised that she would cut all contact with her family if that's what it took to prove her commitment to me. When I got in my car and started the engine, Sarah stood behind the vehicle so I couldn't back out of the parking space. She was crying hysterically and saying that she couldn't live without me. I had to call building security to come and move her away from my car so I could leave for work. The security guard told me that Sarah had been in the parking lot for several hours, and that other residents had complained about her behavior. He said that if Sarah came back to the property, they would call the police and have her removed for trespassing. That evening, I called Lisa to tell her what had happened. Lisa was upset but not surprised. She said that Sarah had been acting erratically for weeks, and that she was worried about what Sarah might do next. Lisa told me that Sarah had been fired from her job the previous week for missing too many days and for acting inappropriately with coworkers. According to Lisa, Sarah had been telling her coworkers about our relationship and asking them for advice on how to win me back. When her supervisor told her that personal problems were affecting her work performance, Sarah had an emotional breakdown in the office and had to be sent home. She was fired a few days later when she didn't show up for work without calling in. Lisa also told me that Sarah had been borrowing money from family members and friends, claiming she needed help paying bills while she looked for a new job. But instead of job hunting, Sarah was spending the money on gas to drive around looking for me, and on new clothes and makeup that she thought might help her win me back. The final piece of information Lisa shared was that Sarah had been keeping a detailed journal about our relationship and breakup. Lisa had seen some of the entries, and she said they were concerning. Sarah had written elaborate fantasies about ways we might get back together, and detailed plans for how she could convince me to forgive her. She had also written angry entries blaming my family for destroying our relationship and expressing resentment toward Emma specifically. After hearing all of this from Lisa, I decided that I needed to take steps to protect myself legally. I went to the police station and filed a report about Sarah's behavior, including the incident in the parking lot and the information about her stalking activities. The officer I spoke with said that while Sarah hadn't technically broken any laws yet, it was good to have documentation in case her behavior escalated further. The officer also suggested that I consider getting a restraining order if Sarah continued to contact me or show up at places where I would be. He said that Sarah's behavior fit a pattern that often leads to more serious harassment, and that it would be better to take preventive action rather than wait for something worse to happen. I also spoke with the management of my apartment building about upgrading the security in the parking lot. They installed additional cameras and changed the access codes for the building entrance. The security guard began doing more frequent patrols, and they gave me a direct number to call if I spotted Sarah on the property again. Lisa called me a few days later to tell me that she had given Sarah an ultimatum. Lisa said she couldn't continue living with Sarah if Sarah didn't get professional help and stop her obsessive behavior. Sarah had refused, claiming that everyone was overreacting and that she just needed time to work things out with me. Lisa told Sarah that she had 1 week to find somewhere else to live. Lisa said she felt bad about kicking her sister out, but that she couldn't enable Sarah's behavior any longer. Lisa was also concerned about her own safety, since Sarah had become unpredictable and was making concerning statements about me and my family. Sarah moved out of Lisa's apartment and went to stay with their parents in another state. Lisa hoped that being away from my city would help Sarah move on and get her life back together. But based on everything I had learned about Sarah's behavior over the past few months, I wasn't convinced that distance alone would solve the problem. Update 3: This will be my final update about the situation with Sarah. It's been 4 months since my last post, and I wanted to close out this story since several people have asked me for updates. Sarah moving back to her parents' house did help the immediate situation. I didn't have any more encounters with her in my parking lot, and she stopped showing up at places around town where she might run into me. For about 6 weeks, everything was quiet, and I started to think that maybe the distance and her family's intervention had helped her move on. But that peace didn't last long. Sarah's parents called Lisa after about a month, saying that Sarah's behavior at their house was becoming unmanageable. Sarah was still obsessed with our relationship and spent most of her time online, looking at social media profiles of me and my family members. She had created multiple fake accounts to follow us after I blocked her original accounts. Sarah's parents found printed screenshots of my social media posts all over her bedroom, along with the journal that Lisa had mentioned. They read some of the entries and were disturbed by the content. Sarah had written detailed fantasies about scenarios where I would realize I had made a mistake and come looking for her. She had also written angry entries about my family, calling them manipulative and claiming they had brainwashed me against her. The most concerning entries were the ones where Sarah wrote about wanting to make my family pay for destroying our relationship. She blamed my parents for raising me to be too dependent on them, and she blamed Emma for taking up too much of my attention. Sarah had written about ways she could expose what she called the unhealthy dynamics in my family, including her plan to spread rumors about inappropriate relationships. Sarah's parents tried to get her to see a counselor, but Sarah refused. She insisted that she was the victim in the situation and that everyone else was wrong. Sarah told her parents that once I realized how much I missed her, I would come back and apologize for how I had treated her. When Sarah's parents threatened to make her leave their house if she didn't get help, Sarah agreed to see someone. But she only went to 2 appointments before quitting. Sarah told her parents that the counselor was taking my side and didn't understand what she was going through. Things came to a head about 2 months ago when Sarah decided to drive back to my city without telling her parents. She had been planning this trip for weeks, according to what her parents found in her journal later. Sarah had written detailed plans about how she would approach me and what she would say to convince me to take her back. Sarah didn't try to contact me directly this time. Instead, she went to my workplace again. But this time, instead of causing a scene in the lobby, she applied for a job opening that had been posted online. Sarah showed up for what she thought was a job interview, planning to surprise me once she was hired. My boss called me into his office that afternoon and asked me if I knew someone named Sarah who had applied for a position in our accounting department. When he described her, I realized immediately what was happening. I explained the situation to my boss, including the previous incident when Sarah had come to my workplace and caused a disruption. My boss was professional about the situation, but he was clearly concerned. He said that Sarah's resume showed a gap in employment and that her references from her previous job had been poor. When they called her former employer, they learned that Sarah had been fired for personal issues affecting her work performance. My boss decided not to hire Sarah, obviously, but he was worried about potential problems if Sarah found out that I had influenced the decision. He suggested that I might want to consider working from home for a few days while they handled the situation with Sarah. Sarah was told that her application was not successful, and according to the receptionist, she became very upset when she received the news. Sarah asked multiple questions about why she wasn't hired and whether her qualifications were sufficient for the position. The receptionist said Sarah seemed to be fishing for information about whether I had been involved in the hiring decision. That evening, I got a call from Lisa telling me that Sarah had called her crying and angry. Sarah told Lisa that she was sure I had sabotaged her job application and that I was trying to ruin her life. Lisa tried to explain to Sarah that applying for a job at my workplace was inappropriate and that she needed to move on from our relationship. Sarah's response was to accuse Lisa of betraying her and taking my side. Sarah said that everyone in her life had abandoned her and that I had somehow turned them all against her. Lisa told me that Sarah seemed to genuinely believe that I had orchestrated some kind of conspiracy to isolate her from her friends and family. The next morning, Sarah showed up at my apartment building again. This time, she didn't wait in the parking lot. She somehow got past the building security and came directly to my apartment door. I woke up to the sound of Sarah knocking and calling my name through the door. When I looked through the peephole, Sarah looked even worse than she had during our last encounter. She was clearly agitated and had been crying. I didn't open the door, but I could hear her talking about how she knew I was inside and that she wasn't leaving until I talked to her. Sarah stayed outside my door for almost 3 hours. She alternated between begging me to let her in and making angry statements about how I was treating her unfairly. Some of her comments were concerning, including statements about how she deserved better treatment and that she was going to make sure everyone knew the truth about me and my family. I called building security, and they contacted the police. When the officers arrived, Sarah was still outside my door. She told them that she was trying to have a conversation with her boyfriend and that I was being unreasonable by refusing to talk to her. The police officers were patient with Sarah, but they explained that I didn't have to talk to her if I didn't want to, and that she was trespassing by being in the building without permission. They asked Sarah to leave the property, and she initially refused. Sarah told the officers that she had applied for a job at my workplace and that I had sabotaged her application. She said she was being discriminated against and that I was harassing her by interfering with her attempts to rebuild her life. The officers listened to her complaints but explained that none of her accusations constituted illegal behavior on my part. Eventually, Sarah agreed to leave the building, but she made several concerning statements as she was walking away. She said that she wasn't giving up and that she would find other ways to make me listen to her. She also made comments about how my family would eventually see the truth about what kind of person I really was. After Sarah left, I spoke with the police officers about getting a restraining order. They said that Sarah's behavior definitely warranted legal protection, and they helped me understand the process for filing the necessary paperwork. They also suggested that I document any future attempts Sarah made to contact me. I filed for a restraining order the next day. The process required me to provide detailed information about Sarah's behavior over the past several months, including all the incidents of harassment and stalking. I also included statements from Lisa, Marcus, and my building security staff about Sarah's actions. The restraining order was approved, and Sarah was served with the legal documents at her parents' house. According to Lisa, Sarah was furious when she received the paperwork. Sarah claimed that I was being vindictive and that the restraining order proved I was trying to control her life. Sarah's parents were embarrassed and upset about the legal situation. They called Lisa to apologize for Sarah's behavior and to assure her that they would make sure Sarah complied with the restraining order. They also said they were going to insist that Sarah get professional help, even if they had to threaten to cut off financial support. Since the restraining order was put in place, I haven't had any direct contact with Sarah. Lisa tells me that Sarah moved to a different state to stay with other relatives, which has made everyone in her family feel more comfortable. Sarah's parents were worried about their own safety after some of the things Sarah had written in her journal about people who had betrayed her. My life has returned to normal for the most part. Dad's health continues to improve, and our family relationships are stronger than ever after going through the medical crisis together. I've started dating someone new, a woman named Jennifer who I met through mutual friends. Jennifer knows about the situation with Sarah, and she's been understanding about the precautions I've had to take. I still get updates about Sarah occasionally through Lisa, though I don't ask for them. Sarah apparently found a job in her new city and is living independently again. Lisa says Sarah still talks about our relationship sometimes, but not with the same intensity as before. Lisa hopes that the distance and the legal consequences have helped Sarah start to move on. Looking back on everything that happened, I'm confident that I made the right decisions. Sarah's behavior during my father's medical emergency showed me exactly who she was as a person, and everything that happened afterward confirmed that assessment. Some people are just not capable of putting others' needs before their own, even in crisis situations. The restraining order will remain in place for another year, and I plan to renew it if necessary. I've learned that you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped, and that enabling bad behavior only makes it worse. Sarah had multiple opportunities to take responsibility for her actions and make better choices, but she chose manipulation and harassment instead. I'm grateful for the support I received from my family and friends during this difficult time. The experience taught me the importance of setting firm boundaries and not compromising on my values, even in romantic relationships. For anyone dealing with a similar situation, I would recommend documenting everything, seeking support from trusted friends and family, and not hesitating to involve law enforcement when someone's behavior becomes threatening or obsessive. Sometimes people show you who they really are during crisis moments, and it's important to believe them the first time. My relationship with Jennifer has been completely different from what I experienced with Sarah. Jennifer respects my family relationships and understands that caring about your family doesn't mean you care less about your partner. She has never made me choose between her and my loved ones, and she supports me when family situations require my attention. Dad continues to do well with his recovery, and the whole experience actually brought our family closer together. We learned not to take our time together for granted, and we make more effort to stay connected even during busy periods. Emma and I talk more frequently now, and she often jokes that at least one good thing came out of the whole mess with Sarah. I hope Sarah has been able to get the help she needs and move forward with her life in a healthier way. Despite everything that happened, I don't wish her any harm. I just needed to protect myself and my family from her destructive behavior. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, trust your instincts. When someone shows you that they can't respect your boundaries or support you during difficult times, believe them. Some relationships can't be saved, and trying to fix someone who doesn't want to change will only cause more pain for everyone involved. This whole experience has made me more appreciative of the people in my life who truly care about me and support me unconditionally. It also reinforced how important it is to choose a partner who enhances your life rather than competing with the other important relationships you have. I don't expect to post any more updates about this situation. The restraining order remains in effect, Sarah is living in another state, and I've moved on with my life. Sometimes the best resolution is simply removing toxic people from your life and focusing on the relationships that bring you joy and peace.